Hey guys, okay, so we're going to be going over photosynthesis. Okay, so we just finished cellular respiration, and that's how us as humans we take in energy, or we take in glucose and we try to make energy out of it. So for photosynthesis, this is where our plants are taking in energy and making glucose. So it's actually the reverse. So we've talked about this before when we talked about ecosystems and stuff. We have heterotrophs and we have autotrophs. Okay, heterotrophs are animals that cannot make their own food, so they have to get their food from other organisms, such as autotrophs. Okay, autotrophs, those are our plants. They make their own food. They automatically make their own food. Okay, so what plants do is they convert energy, light energy from the sun, to make chemical energy to make glucose. Okay, so we talked about there being tons of different types of forms of energy. Well, light energy from the sun is one of them, and that's the main thing that plants need in order to make glucose. So for our heterotrophs, we are heterotrophs. We are animals. We have to eat other organisms in order to get our energy. And so we get our energy from eating others, and then we take that glucose that we take in, and we make energy through cellular respiration. Plants take in the energy and make the glucose that they can use to perform daily functions. So our heterotrophs can also be called consumers, and then our autotrophs will also be called producers. Producers are always at the bottom of the food web or food chain, remember, because they are the base of every ecosystem and community, because everything else lives off of the plants. If we did not have plants or producers, we would not have a stable world or environment. So I know here we see, I guess with PowerPoint it got kind of messed up, but this just says carbon dioxide, okay? So how are they connected? This slide is basically to tell you and show you that the chemical formula for cellular respiration, which is this one on the top for heterotrophs, okay, is the exact same as the chemical formula for autotrophs, so for plants, except flipped. Okay, so us as humans, we breathe in oxygen and we eat food to live. So we breathe in the oxygen here and we eat food, which is glucose here. Okay, then we convert that by breathing out carbon dioxide and water and making energy from breaking down that glucose. Now for autotrophs, we breathe out carbon dioxide and plants breathe it in. When plants breathe in carbon dioxide, they breathe out and get rid of as waste oxygen. So that's why, Ms. Taylor has constantly said that us as humans, we freaking suck. Well, we need to not get rid of all the plants because, they give us this little thing called oxygen that we kind of really do need. So for heterotrophs, the chemical formula here is oxidation. It's exergonic because we are getting rid of or releasing energy. It's exiting. Autotrophs for photosynthesis, it is endergonic and being reduced because we are taking energy in and making glucose. So go ahead, take a look at this question. I put it in here so soon because we know the basic premise and basic details of how photosynthesis happens, what plants need and everything. So I put this in here to see where we're at. So they want to know which one of these best supports the researcher's claim. The researcher claimed that increased atmospheric carbon dioxide caused an increased growth rate in plants. Now we just went over, if you didn't know before, we just went over in the previous slide that plants breathe in carbon dioxide. So if they're breathing in carbon dioxide, obviously they're gonna grow, right? So, did I talk about fossil fuels or living organisms such as plants having remains? No, so it's not A. B, atmospheric carbon dioxide is a byproduct of cellular respiration. We do breathe out carbon dioxide, which is a metabolic process that occurs in plants and other living organisms. Cellular respiration does occur in plants and other living organisms. C, atmospheric carbon dioxide typically enters plant leaves through stomata, which plants rely on for regulating gas exchange within the atmosphere. Did I talk about that? Atmospheric carbon dioxide is the raw material for photosynthesis, which plants rely on for producing sugars and other organic compounds. To me, D sounds beautiful and wonderful, and hopefully that's what you thought too, because that's the right answer. If you don't understand this question, please, message me on Remind or through the hub, and let me know so I can explain it to you. So, what does it mean to be a plant? So, obviously, you need to collect light energy and transform it into chemical energy, okay? So, you have to collect the light energy. Now, before that light energy can actually be converted into chemical energy, aka glucose, you have to be able to store it a little bit, okay? Because you have to store it in a stable form so that way you can move it to the parts of the plant that need it the most. So, you have to get building block atoms from the environment, so aka water, carbon dioxide, and then you'll produce all organic molecules that are needed for you to grow. So plants themselves can produce their own carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, all of that. All right, so let's look at another question here. We have oxygen concentration in the water of a lake. So as time goes on, we have here, obviously, it's sunlight. Okay, it's during the day. These are the hours of the darkness. Okay, so we see that the graph is decreasing as it gets later. So they want to know what causes the trends in oxygen concentration shown in the graph above. Well, we know plants need light. Okay, so they need light in order to go through photosynthesis. And when they go through photosynthesis, they take in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen. So, are they breathing out a lot of oxygen at night if there's no light to take in? No. D is your answer. And another one. You guys go ahead and look over this. My hint to you is read the question before you read all of the other nonsense. Okay, so what you should have been able to see is that you really just needed the question and then the graph itself, okay, the table. The table just tells you here, you can see if they have more exposure to light, aka they are uncovered, we're gonna be able to, sorry guys, germinate and grow. Germinate just means to grow. So an increased exposure to light caused an increase in the germination of the seeds. Okay, so you probably learned about this, hopefully, probably not, but Miss Taylor always hopes and wishes, but the parts of a plant, okay? So, if you didn't know, the leaves of the plant actually collect all of the light energy, okay? That's where all of the sunlight hits first, okay? And that's where the plant has the capabilities of taking in that light energy and storing it elsewhere. Now, under or in the leaves, okay, you have these holes that kind of look like pores called stomata. Stomata is where the gas exchange occurs, okay? So you'll have oxygen going out, CO2 coming in. Now the water is getting sucked up from the roots, okay? The roots are going to be underground. And since the roots are underground, they're getting soaked up and sent and transported up to the leaves or wherever the plant needs the water. All the other nutrients we're absorbing and getting through the roots. That's how all of these plants grow. This one just looks really mean and creepy. I'm sorry. Okay, so here, this is kind of more so a microscopic view of our leaves. Okay, so this is a picture of the stomata. It looks kind of like a mouth. Okay, but it's like a little pore or opening for gas exchange. So here we have the cuticle, which is basically the top part of the leaf, okay, that you can touch and feel. In between is called the mesophyll. Now, when you get within it, you have these tubes called xylem and phloem. Xylem and phloem are just what helps transport the water and other nutrients to and from the roots and leaves. Okay, now your chloroplasts are all of these, okay? All of these are your chloroplasts. So that is where photosynthesis is actually going to be taking place. Okay, the guard cells just kind of help guard and protect the amount of water coming in and out. So, we briefly talked about chloroplast structure when we were going over plant and animal cells. Okay, so this is your chloroplast. I said all these little pancake looking things are called thylakoids. Okay, now the parts that connect all of the thylakoids are called granum. Okay, and then the stroma is the actual membrane that it sits on. Now, the thylakoid membrane contains chlorophyll molecules. Chlorophyll is what helps make the plant green. The thylakoid membrane is where our electron transport chain occurs for photosynthesis, so for our plants, and it is also where ATP synthase is. Okay, if we remember from cellular respiration, ATP synthase is that big old protein that produces and pumps that proton gradient, so that way you can get the ATP and the energy made. So, photosynthesis. We have something called the light reactions and then the Calvin cycle, okay? So in cellular respiration, we had 4 different steps, but here we just have 2. But within the light reactions, there's 2 subsystems within it, so it is kind of like 3, but we'll go over that. So your light reactions, like in the name, they are dependent on light. Now, don't think that that means that the Calvin cycle can happen without light, because when we say light dependent or light independent, that just means the light reactions is the part where we need to use that light energy from the sun, so that way we can take that energy that's converted and put it into the Calvin cycle. Okay, so the Calvin cycle takes that solar energy that has been converted into ATP to use to make glucose. Now, the Calvin cycle is literally what builds your sugars, okay? It's called carbon fixation. So we take our ATP and our NADPH, okay, and we just create glucose from that. So for the light reactions, we have the electron transport chain again, okay? So we have to have proteins in the organelle's membrane in order to actually have this protein pump. But this time our electron acceptor is going to be called NADPH, okay? So they just added a phosphate in there. Okay, so the proton gradient is along the inner membrane of the thylakoid, okay? Because remember, chloroplast, that is where photosynthesis is taking place. We are all inside the chloroplast, okay? So they find the double membrane, and that's where ATP synthase enzyme is, okay? So here's like our electron transport chain, okay? This would be inside the mitochondria for cellular respiration. This is inside of the chloroplast for photosynthesis. So the electron transport chain, we're pumping all of our hydrogen positive ions, and this is how we're creating ATP. I'm going to pause, and then we're going to continue into photosynthesis video part 2.